Dope.
Hey, Fanatiq, thanks for being here, friend. So you wanted to jump in on this? I want to give you space.
I did actually. So there was a few things that were being said earlier, and I felt like were kind of ridiculous. So I just want to kind of throw it at you guys and see how your brains work or don't work. Either way. So first off, when we were talking about the word earlier, and like whether or not that's like a slur or an offensive thing or something, or whether or not there can be a difference between when black people say it versus other people. The thing that I've been saying, and this is a conversation that I had quite a while ago with Destiny, in which I was like talking about whether or not a word is a locution. And when I kind of like pointed it out to him, he really didn't have much of a response to it. But I wanted to throw that at you guys. Have any of you guys heard of the word locution before?
No.
I've heard the word.
No.
But I don't remember.
Is that a pasta?
No. Good guess though. A locution is a word that's like maybe characterized or specific or germane to a specific group of people or a cultural level or like a specific region. That's what a locution is, and it might have a very different meaning depending on like what the group of people is. Well, a common locution that everyone knows is like something like sugar, right? Where like sugar in the South has like a specific meaning that like those that Southerners use, right? And another like locution, which might
Or bless you.
Or bless you.
Bless your heart.
Bless your
Bless
heart.
your heart.
Perfect.
Yes.
Or
Bless
another
your
locution
heart
might be like
being
in
called, like,
Japan.
honey or
So
something
you know how
like
in
that.
Japan they might say the word like Nippon. Nippon is what they refer to their country
Nippon,
as.
yeah.
But we don't refer to it as Nippon. We refer to it as Japan. And in fact, every country refers to it as Japan. Only Japanese refer to it as Nippon. In fact, if I was to call it Nippon, it might be offensive to some folks, right? That's
Yeah,
a
they look weird at
locution.
you.
They do, because it's a locution. It's a word that has a specific meaning used by a specific group of people that pertains to them. So then when we start looking at words, sometimes there might be overlap, where a word might be a locution, but might not be a locution. But might have a different locutional meaning for other people. I'm going to give you a quick example of that. I'm going to talk about the phrase RPG. When I say RPG to you, what do you think? What comes to mind?
Role-playing game,
Role-playing
obviously.
Role-playing
or,
game.
rocket-propelled
Rocket
grenades.
propelled
Zelda.
grenade.
My dice, come on.
All right. Well, yeah, you're right, because you got your Zeldas, right? Your RPGs and your Final Fantasies and your World of Warcrafts, and then you also have, if you're in the military and they're using the phrase RPG, it has an entirely different meaning. So RPG is a locution for gamers, right? But it's also a locution for those different people. And this happens all the time across all different spectrums. So I don't understand why we act like we know what locutions are and understand it, because we see them being used. And within certain context, you immediately know. If I'm talking to a military nigga and I say RPG, he's not thinking about no dang video game. Likewise, I never even knew it stood for rocket-propelled grenade. That wasn't a thought in my mind at all, because I've always heard it within the gaming context, right? Unless you're talking about GoldenEye. Now, my point being, coon is a locution. When black people use the word coon, it has its own very specific meaning, and we all know that it's not race essentialized while it's race constrained. So I know when I'm talking about a coon, I'm talking about it only applies to black people, but I'm also talking about specific traits, specific attributes, specific actions, etc. So there's a behavior attached to it that now makes it a qualifier for this word. Whereas when white people use the word coon, it was not a locution. When white people use the word coon, it meant universally applied, just a disparaging, disrespectful term for black people, which had an association with raccoons, because raccoons happen to have those eyes, which they called bandit eyes, and they were calling black people thieves. That's where that word originates. So if you have that, when it's universally applied to all black people, it's now race essentialized and it becomes problematic. Do you understand the difference between those two things?
Yes.
I
And
understand.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then if that's the case, then you can stop referring to coon as a racist term, because racist means something that is derogatory, and racism is the belief that all races in general, produce these specific traits which create an inferior or a superior. Now, when you're using something that's race essentialized, then it can fall under the guise of racism, because you're saying your race has produced these traits just inherent to your race, and so therefore it's inferior. That's what you would be saying. But when you're not saying that, when you're saying your actions, your attributes, your traits are something that are negative, that's what we're saying is a problem. That's not racist, because I'm not saying it's essentialized to all race. It's constrained to the race, but not essentialized to the race. Do you understand the difference? So then it's not racist. Now, when a white person is using it and they're using it essentialized, it's racist. When a black person's using it and it's not essentialized, it's not racist. Is it still a slur? Absolutely. So is stupid. So is dumb. So is idiot. All of these things are slur, but there's a difference between a racist slur, a race essentialized slur, a locution which is constrained to a race. All of these things are very different. So when white people using their understanding of a word start policing black language as if we don't understand that AAVE is a thing, so now we are actually having to constrain our language for the white gaze because their perspective says that the way we use the word is superior to yours. So then therefore anytime you use the word, you're not allowed your own specific usage. That starts being problematic. Could you imagine going to a Japanese person and saying, no, you can't say Nippon, you have to say Japan? That's what we call it. It's Japan. You wouldn't do that. That's retarded. We all recognize everyone has a right to their own language. Language develops naturally, and then when something becomes so colloquial and so common and so pervasive, the idea that you, from your perspective and your white gaze, can now dominate the conversation to tell us what the word has to be is literally the epitome of supremacy. I'll rest my point. I'll rest everything there.
Can I just clip all that and take it and replay that on my show on repeat half the time? Because I that is one of the greatest explanations I've heard in quite a while.
I mean, I understand all of that, but it doesn't.
And let's be
coon
clear.
is still a
No black
racial
person
slur,
has
and
been.
it's a-
Sorry, I want to hear what Mando said. Mando, go ahead.
Well, I agree with everything that he's saying, but it doesn't change the fact that coon is still a racial slur, and it's literally a discriminative term used for black people specifically.
Mando, are you
That is-
black?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, because if you weren't, I was going to say you can just say the C word. I was.
I probably shouldn't be saying it because I don't want like Primes to get like doxxed for this
He
shit,
won't.
but-
You don't get doxxed, or you don't get deplatformed. When you're discussing these things and you're doing so in a respectful way and you're not using it to attack another person, you're not in violation of terms of service. I say it all the time on my server.
Cool.
I say the hard R when I'm having these kind of conversations and we're actually trying to be descriptive. So that's not the problem.
Son.
But in any case, so
But
you're
like
saying it's a racial
my whole
slur.
thing is it is a racial slur,
But not
was
racist.
Literally created. Well, yeah, it's not racist. I
Okay.
agree that what you're saying, like the term was literally created by racist people to discriminate against blacks in a racist manner. So like,
Wait,
if a black person is
which one
using
came first? How do you know?
coon.
Yeah, how do you know? Like, how do you know where the black word? Are you saying for sure that the black word derivates from the original, from the other one, the way the white people used it?
Coon is literally a shortened version of like
Raccoon, as I said.
Raccoon.
Yeah, sure. My question was, are you sure that the word that the black people are using, are you sure that derivates from the original one that the white people used? Are you sure of that?
How could it not? How could it not when they were the ones who literally created it as a derogatory racial slur to discriminate against black people?
Okay, so then the question becomes, if it's definitely a derivative, then why is it different? Why is it so different in meaning, in usage?
In regards to what?
As I explained earlier, if you were paying attention, when white people use the word coon, it is essentialized. It is not talking about specific attributes or anything. It is literally associated with just assuming that black people are thieves, whereas when black people using it, it's specific attributes and actions of specifically self-harming, racist perpetuating, anti-black racist perpetuating black people. So explain to me where there was such a distinction in these these words if one derivates from the other.
So aren't both uses of the term both serve the same? Don't they both serve the same purpose, but just in different ways? Isn't it still discriminating against black people for one reason or another?
No. One is not meant to discriminate against black people. And again, if it served a certain purpose, it would have the same definition. One of them, as I keep calling to your attention, this very clear distinction. One of them is something that is essentialized, and I see maybe I've used that word a few times, and it hasn't been clear, I guess. So let me break down what essentialized mean. When a word becomes essentialized, it means that it is universally applied. Something that is universally applicable, you can say, okay, so then now, just the state of being black automatically qualifies you as this thing. There's an old joke that I've heard before. It's a very derogatory joke. I won't say the word because it's on Prime Stream. Last time on my stream I said it. What do you call an N-word with a PhD?
What?
N-word. The purpose of that joke is that no matter what level of success you attain to, no matter anything else that comes along, you're still that. right? It's essentialized. It basically says it doesn't matter who you are, you'll still always be that. That's the purpose of that joke. That's how the word coon is used. It's not about your actions, it's not about your attributes, it's not about any of those things. No matter what, universally applied, you're a coon just for being a black person, meaning that you're derogatory, you're a thief, you're any of the negative attributes I want to say. Now, when black people use that word, that's not what we're talking about. Again, there's a very clear difference. When black people use the word, we're using it to call out what we consider to be bad actors who are perpetuating white supremacy against their own self-interest. That is the distinction. Now we're talking about specific attributes, specific self-harm traits. That's what black people are using. White people are just saying across the board, universally applied, aka essentialized. This is what this word means. That's why these two things are distinct.
Like, for instance, and let me just, before I drop down, I just want to thank you first for the explanation. I think it was really clear, and you used a lot of evaluative terms that most people are not capable of using and or are not clear enough to elucidate. So let me just ask you this one question and just make the comparative. So say I'm sitting on a panel, a bunch of people are using the N-bomb and the C-bomb, and I'm the one white guy on the panel. And as the bad example, if I was to just chime in, even though they're all using it against each other, me chiming in, that makes me a bigot, right?
Sure, I would imagine in most cases we're going to assume it because, again, it's a locution. And so it's going to apply to a specific region or a specific race or a specific culture or a specific group of people. That's what a locution is. And so we would not give you the same interpretation that we don't have the automatic presumption that you're using it with the same intention, especially considering that you guys had a different locution in which you guys were using it in a different way.
Yeah, so in other words, if I'm sitting with somebody and I call them a cracker, that's okay because cracker to cracker, right?
I don't know if you guys develop that as a locution such that it stops becoming offensive or so on or whatever, then you could. Yeah. I know, like for example, some white people might be particularly offended by the word hillbilly, right? And it doesn't matter if another white person is saying it or whatever. Some people will just be offended regardless. So in that case, then it hasn't been used as some sort of euphemism or some sort of like positive locution or any of those kinds of things. And so then in those cases, it might just be universally offensive. Some words haven't been reclaimed, and that's just what it's going to be. Now, sometimes maybe you guys might eventually reclaim that word and make it a positive used by only you guys, and someone on the outside, you can assume, no, you're meaning it and intending it to be derogatory, and that would be a fair assumption. I wouldn't have the presumption of innocence or presumption of kindredness that makes you assume that I'm not meaning it in a bad way. That could be, but so far that word hasn't been reclaimed in that way.
Just so you know, nobody will let me reclaim the K word, but I think it's the funniest word because I get to, I'm only allowed to use it alone in a room, and I scream that out. But if anybody doesn't know what I'm saying, I can't actually say it because TOS. So, anyways, I really appreciate y'all. Prime, thank you for having me up. I expected just to listen in the other room, and really appreciate your panels. Everybody on the panel, I hear you, and not only do I hear you, but I've learned something today, and I've learned a little more. It makes me understand a better position for the next time that I go on my TV's panel and such. So thank you.
Hey, I didn't know who you are, Aaron. But thank you for stopping by. We'd love to have you in the future.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to come back. You cover a lot of topics that I go through, and currently I'm looking at the disenfranchisement pipeline. That's generally the theme of my show. So I appreciate you.
All right. Well, you know what? I'll send you a friend request.
Oh, righteous.
Yeah, and maybe we can have you on. But thanks so much.
Thank you all so much, and I appreciate your thoughts and minds. Have a good night.
All right, Aaron. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Somebody. Sorry. You go ahead, STB. And just so you know, Fanatiq, we're getting a little bit of a echo from you, tiny bit. But STB, Phil, you want to say something, and then got Kilo.
So somebody in chat said, I definitely call another Jewish person helping Nazis in World War II a rat and vermin, and native earned it, would still understand they just don't want to die, but doesn't change what they were doing. Is that comparable to you guys?
Sure, I could see that. I could understand why.
Yeah, like within the Jewish community, yeah.
So I think when it comes to like us black people calling other black people Uncle Toms, it has less to do with their race and more to do with like what they are doing. Like I said before, what they're doing to go against. It actually perpetuates white supremacy. In this particular instance, ABBA donating money to the Atlanta Police Department, just despite FD knowing that he has stake in that community. He lives in that city. He lives in that city, and it's just, I think it was an appropriate use of the term there.
Absolutely.
I just have an issue with any black person using Uncle Tom or Coon against another black person.
So listen. Earlier,
you can criticize someone without using racial slurs. You can do that. You can totally do that. Like if he wanted to call, like I said, if he wanted to call ABBA a bootlicker and point out how he was being hypocritical, right, and disingenuous, they're all valid critiques. They hold value, right? But it's just, especially when you're literally basing it off of like him doing that and him being associated with Destiny, who he subjectively believes is racist without any what? Does he have any proof of Destiny being racist?
Of course, we all do. What?
Are you serious? Was that a serious question?
But hold on, we don't have to get in that. No, because it didn't have to become a conversation around White Zaddy. But instead, what we can talk about is the fact that, first off, there are plenty of benefits. Lethe was asking this question earlier, and I didn't get a chance to answer it. I had some other stuff to take care of at the time. But the conversation, Lethe Waterkai.
The Waterkai,
yeah. He when he was asking earlier, specifically, what is the benefit? And I think that I asked him, what's the benefit of the word benefit? What's the benefit of any word, for that matter? And the benefit is like concise communication. What's the benefit of even knowing the word locution? What's the benefit of literally any kind of diction whatsoever? The purpose of words is to find a way of communicating an idea such that we can eloquently communicate and be readily understood, right? And so I would say, now, you can say all of the things you described. You said, hey, he can call him a bootlicker. It's like, sure. You can call him disingenuous. Sure. You can call him self-hating. Okay, you can do all of those things, right? The fact of the matter is, all of that's summed up in one word: coon. And that's the effectiveness of it. And I think the idea that a word like that would derive with its colloquial usage, considering the fact, would develop with its colloquial usage, considering the environment that we've been in this white supremacist country. Black people at one point were the second largest group of people within this country. Of course, now it's Hispanics. But at one point, we were the second largest, race of people within this country, and we were the largest ones subjected to all of this intentional systemic oppression and white supremacy. So when that stuff was aimed directly at us, and so we're working and fighting for our progress, for our economic and civil mobility, and you have people who are black people who were working against their own interest, I think developing a word to describe that phenomenon, I think is perfectly fine. And we do it all of the time. And people on the left talk about, the benefits of once they understood what the word transgender meant and how it helped them to identify and understand what they were experiencing. Or we talk about, for example, myself, I talk about learning what the word internalized racism meant. It did something to help verbalize and understand what this concept was, and something that I had personally experienced. So because of that, I would say that the reason why the word coon is particularly beneficial is because it short circuits, instead of me having to say self-hating, perpetuating white supremacy against his own interest black person, I can just say coon. We all get it. Now, you can say it's harmful, you can say it's bad, the same way that any other slurs are bad, but that doesn't mean that it's not effective communication, and it doesn't have a value in a white supremacist country with severe and pervasive anti-black racism.
So let's go to Kilo and then Razor.
Just 2 quick points. So, when you say beneficial, you're not saying positive. You're saying it has utility to the person using it. Just to be clear. The thing I wanted to ask you, Fanatiq, is how you feel about people who are not your own race policing others on the use of slurs that are related to your race.
Oh man, I wish you were here just a little bit earlier. I said all of it already.
Did I miss this?
You did, but it's okay. I don't mind repeating myself. If you weren't here for it, it's totally fine. I can say it succinctly, especially because I already said it once.
I also wasn't here, so you good.
Got you. So what I said was specific. Oh man, that's heavy, because then I would have to go through the whole thing.
Do you think you're
Go
able to
on, take your
give like
time.
cliff notes or
You
because I
take-
know I can go click it.
Yeah, take your time, buddy. It's fine.
I'm sorry. Okay, look, because
We don't have to.
I don't want people feeling like I'm just repeating myself a whole bunch, but it's just I
Yeah.
have to in order to explain the position, right?
Your words are so beautiful that it brings tears to my eyes. So do it again,
Stop it.
please.
Thank you, Prime. All right, listen. So it starts with the word locution, and the word locution, I feel like rather than just go ahead and give the definition off my top, I'll just use a Merriam-Webster definition. The word locution is a particular form of expression or a peculiarity of phrasing, especially a word or expression characteristic of a region, group, or cultural level. That's what locution means in Merriam-Webster. And so I gave the example that you look at something like Nippon. Nippon is what Japanese people refer to their own country. That's a locution because we don't say Nippon. We say Japan. And so does everyone else. They say Nippon. It's a locution for them. And you find all of these things. I went into the example of, we look at the phrase RPG. If I say RPG to you, what do you think? What word comes to your mind when I say RPG?
Role-playing game.
Rocket propelled grenade.
Okay, boom, two different things. If I was to say that in the context of a military, they immediately know I'm talking about rocket propelled grenade. If I say it to like 90% of the gamers, 90% of the people on Twitch, the first thing that comes to their mind is role-playing game. Those are locutions. Those are words that are peculiar, that are specific to a region or a group. Now, remember what the last one said, cultural level, right? And so when you start looking at like different regions and different groups and different cultural levels, and you find black people are using a word like coon, but we're not meaning it to be like disparaging, we're not using it to try to say something across all black people, then now all of a sudden that's a locution. And so then I talked about the fact that the word coon, when white people use it, is essentialized. Right? And essentialize is a verb that means to like universally apply something to almost imply that the thing is inherent to that thing. So when white people use the word coon, they've constantly been using the word coon to specifically say that black people, inherent to their blackness, are something disparaging. Now you can look at the etymology of it, and it might have been associated with raccoons. Raccoons had the raccoon eyes, and so then they would say that black people were thieves, right? So then that's why they would say something like black people are coons, and they're just talking about all black people across the board. Whereas when black people were using it, it is not essentialized. It's associated with specific characteristics, traits, actions, etc. And so then at that point, when we black people say coon to another person, we're not saying all of us are that, we're saying you were that for the actions that you displayed. So then at that point, it's no longer essentialized. So there is a very difference. Now, we always obviously understand that there's a thing called AAVE. And I said it would be absurd of us to go to someone in Japan and say, you can't say Nippon, you gotta say Japan, because that's what we call it. We would say that'd be foolish. You know that they're entitled to call their country whatever the freak they want to, and that they're entitled to that locution. In the same sense, there is a thing called African American Vernacular English, and we have our own locutions. So then to say from your white gaze, it's the epitome of white supremacy to say my understanding and my usage of this word supersedes yours. So anytime you use the word, you're using it in a way that I am, and therefore it's offensive, as if we are not entitled like every other person on the planet. And I can list you God knows how many different examples of it, of all of the various locutions that all of these people use, but now black people can't have theirs because the white supremacist says, no, my usage of the word is the definition that supersedes yours, and so whenever you use it, you're using it from the scope of me, and so it's now essentialized, it's racist, it's problematic, etc. Finally, I'll close with this. The idea of something being racist means that you believe inherent to a race, there are different traits and associations that are created inherent to the race that create a superior and an inferiority. That's what racist is. So when you start talking about the word coon being racist, it's because you're saying inherent to the race, essentialized, that there's a superior or inferiority. Now, if I'm not saying it inherent to the race, I'm saying it's your actions and your characteristics which deviate from the typical black actions, then at that point it's not essentialized, and so therefore it's not inherently racist, though it is race constrained. And those two things are different. If you don't understand any parts of that, you can ask me and I'll go through them.
Not only that, just real quick, the meaning of that word was changed to "you're not black enough" when nobody uses it in that way. I've heard arguments that will strawman people who use that word to say, "Oh, well, you're just saying that this person isn't black enough. That's why you're calling them an Uncle Tom." Now, where I do disagree with Fanatiq is the use of the C word. I do feel like that's more that has more racial connotation to it than Uncle Tom, even though people can sometimes use them interchangeably. The C word has a little bit more sting to it, I think, just in my opinion.
I mean,
And I think that
it has more sting to it.
Wait,
I forget who
having
was
sting
next.
doesn't
Who was
change anything.
next?
All right, let me just make myself a little bit clearer. I think that using the C word is there are instances where it can be racist, but I don't think Uncle Tom. I don't think the same thing about Uncle Tom. I don't think there's any situation where I would see a black person calling another black person Uncle Tom and think that it's racist.
Wait, hold on. So you don't see the example of a black person calling another black person Uncle Tom, and then that being racist. That can never happen. But you're saying a black person can call another black person coon and it be racist, even though Uncle Tom and coon are literally synonymous?
I don't think they're literally synonymous.
They're not
I got you.
synonymous.
I'm glad that you said that. Explain to me what the distinction is.
Okay, when you're calling somebody an Uncle Tom, you're saying that they are going against basically they're over eager, basically. They're very eager to win the
Basically
approval of white
sellouts.
people.
Yeah, they're basically sellouts.
And when you're
Sympathizers
calling somebody,
with-
We say the same. That's
Now-
what coon means. That's what coon means.
Now-
hold on. When we talk about Coondis Owens, we're talking about her intentionally trying to earn the approval of white people. Likewise, when we saw what's that nigga Bobby Shmurda, and he was dancing on that table in front of them white folks, like trying to get that record contract, we called him cooning because he was trying to earn the approval of white people. In fact, if you look in Urban Dictionary right now, what cooning is, it's
but would you call
literally-
him an Uncle Tom? What would you call him an Uncle Tom?
You could. Both of those words are interchangeable, as I said, because the definition, yes, it is, because the definition you just provided for Uncle Tom, I agree with. And so if I agree with the definition you just provided for Uncle Tom, but Urban Dictionary says the definition you just provided for Uncle Tom is the exact same definition of what they describe for cooning, then it sounds like these words are synonymous. And if they are not, again, I would need to know what the distinction is.
Well, it's just in the way that people use them. I like I said, I haven't heard anybody refer to Bobby Shmurda as an Uncle Tom, but I have heard what you just said.
Yeah,
cooning.
I've heard people refer to Bobby Shmurda as
You did
coon.
say
I've heard people
was a-
refer to Terry Crews as I don't like
As an
saying the
Uncle
word.
Tom.
The C word.
I really don't like saying it because I got
Yeah.
called it for an entire day because I dared to disagree with one black person.
Okay, then don't
No,
say
you-
it. Say the C
not-
word.
just say the C word or say
Okay,
like the.
But yeah,
UT.
so it's okay. I've been occasionally calling it being called a trash panda because reasons.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So
So good. My bad.
I just want to say really
What
quick,
is
I looked up Uncle Tom on Urban Dictionary right now. Now, obviously, I know it's just Urban Dictionary, but I mean, we all know what this word freaking means. Uncle Tom is a person of any race, of any color, that degrades his own people, right? So a black person degrading his own people, we'll call that person an Uncle Tom. The action associated with what they were doing, we would normally call that cooning. We don't say Uncle Tom. We don't normally just say Uncle Tomming, right? Like Uncle Tom is not an adverb, it's not a verb, it's just it's whatever.
Okay, I see what
But
you're
So in
saying.
the
it
same
is a-
sense,
it
Uncle
is-
Tom, you're saying Uncle Tom is
being an
the
Uncle
individual,
Tom, being
and
an Uncle
cooning
Tom
is
is
the
a term you
behavior.
could say possibly.
Being an Uncle Tom, right? Uncle Tom is a descriptor of the person and whatever, and the thing that their action that they're doing is degrading their own people. Now, who in this who
behavior.
exactly the behavior? Now, who in this room right now wouldn't say that we would say cooning is degrading your own people?
Wait, rephrase that. Say that question
I
again.
wouldn't.
Of course, no
I
one
would.
would.
It's-
Everyone
it's-
here, and that's what I said, is everyone in this round table right now, every single person in here knows that cooning is degrading your own people.
Yes.
The words are interchangeable. They mean the same things. Again, there is no distinction. And if there is one, then now that we know that one doesn't apply, I'm asking you, can you please provide me with another one?
I think there was an adapted definition of the use of that word, which had something more. You touched on it. It was related to thievery and stuff like that. So there is an alternative definition that I think is
Right.
probably a little bit more colloquial at this point. But you're correct. The original definition of those two terms are probably interchangeable.
But the adapted
Yeah.
definition that you're referring to is not part of the
Also,
black locution. It would only be regarding to white people when they use that
It
word
would
because
be
it was
separate,
universally
correct.
applied.
Yeah.
The black locution of the word, we know exactly what the freak it means, and it is directly synonymous with the word freaking
Okay,
Uncle Tom
okay.
and
I got you.
it's
I got what you're
it's-
getting at, Fanatic. Hold on. I got what he's getting at. Okay, when we see black people being like excessively obedient or in service of white people, we would call that being an Uncle Tom. Cooning, which you were describing with Bobby Shmurda's behavior, was him using typical black stereotypes to try to or in front of white people, right, in front of the white gaze, as you just spoke, being a stereotypical young black man dancing on the table. That is what people will refer to as cooning. I really don't think I would hear people say, I really wouldn't
Doing
hear
whatever
people
you
say he was
can.
being an Uncle Tom by doing that, right? Does that make sense? Like, am I not making any sense?
You're not, because
So
again, the thing that you said applies to
cooning.
both. The thing you just said about
Yes.
like a person doing this behavior, like excessively trying to fit in with white people, that person would be you would say being an Uncle Tom, right? But they would also be cooning. Here's the definition for cooning in Urban Dictionary: feeling the need to throw your own under the bus for gain, right? Doing that thing where you're trying to excessively fit in with black people, throwing your race under the bus for your own personal gain is cooning. Again, these words are obviously interchangeable. Again, so that's the second one that you've tried. Come up with the third definition, and we'll find that these two words
That might
are
have to do
synonymous.
with locution. That might have to do with locution. You're on the
I
West
think
Coast.
that-
You use words differently. I'm on the East Coast. We use words differently. In the South, they use words differently. You just said no. You just started this whole thing out by
He's
explaining
referring
that
to
people.
those locutions of the word.
He's,
Like that's
he's
what he's
referring
referring
to them.
so
He's referring
I'm-
to them, but Uncle Tom is the individual, and cooning is the behavior that individual is exhibiting.
Absolutely,
Okay, so
and everyone knows
I-
this is pretty. That's not. They use the exact same phrase in the Northeast. They use it in the Southeast. They use it in the South. Like literally, these words are pretty pervasive, and there hasn't been any specific locution usage for these words in different parts of the country. It's pretty pervasive among black people. Show me a region where this doesn't apply. We all know what the freak this word means. Now, if you've been using it wrong, I mean, I'll give you that. It's possible.
I don't use it.
Okay,
So
well,
I haven't
if
been
your
using it wrong.
understanding of the word was wrong, then I'll give you that. It's possible. But everyone else here
Is it
knows what this
possible
word
your
means.
understanding of the word is
I
wrong?
would think
Yeah,
it was possible. It's always possible that I'm
I mean,
wrong.
are we using Urban Dictionary for our references?
I'm not
here?
using Urban Dictionary for I'm not. I'm going to answer the question. You've asked me 3 questions. You've asked me 3 questions, and I'll answer the first one now. The first question you asked me was. The first question you asked me. The first question you asked me was. Is it possible that I'm wrong? It's always possible that I'm wrong. It's just rare because that's why I always look up other references and use different dictionaries. Now the second question that you asked me. Now the second question
I'm gonna let you go.
I got you.
Counseling, brother.
I got you.
Everyone shut
I
up.
got you.
Everyone shut up.
Counseling.
Everyone shut up. I'm taking control. Okay, this is amusing, and I miss my friend Fanatiq. Fanatiq, go ahead. Just answer.
You
the
got it.
questions.
Don't talk when I'm talking, nigga. Now the second question that you asked me. Now the
Wait, what you
second.
said?
Now the
I didn't hear you.
second. Now the second. Now the second.
You said don't
Now
do
the
it.
second.
Guys,
Now the
please,
second.
no.
Now the second. Now the second question that
Yeah,
you
you
asked.
said
Now
don't
the
do what?
second. Now the 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 second question that you asked me was. Now the second question that you asked me was, is it possible that there are different locutions within these two different words? Don't talk when I'm talking,
fucking unhinged.
nigga. Now the second. Now the second. Now the second. Now the second. Mute him so I can finish my point. It's that simple. I'm talking. Shut up while I'm talking. Now the second question that you asked me was. Now you don't gotta laugh in the mic, bro. You can mute. Now the second question that you.
sorry.
Now the second question that you asked me was. Is it possible that there's just a different locution where this word would have been used differently in the South than it was in the Northeast, etc.? Now, the fact of the matter is, this word has it dates back really far back, right? Now, obviously, the way that we use Uncle Tom deviates from the way it originally originated with Uncle Tom's cabin. In fact, Uncle Tom was actually more of the positive figure within that thing. But we obviously recognize that this word has been pretty freaking pervasive. We've all understood what the freak it's meant. We can all trace literally any example of its usage. Now, I'm a person, because of the way that I was raised and because of my own behaviors, I'm really attracted to words and word usage. Now, I obviously understand what this freaking word means. Now, if you're uneducated, I get it. Don't project your uneducation onto me. You started this conversation twice already talking about two distinctions, which I quickly proved to you weren't there. Now, yes, I did use Urban Dictionary. The only reason why I made the appeal to Urban Dictionary is specifically because you were acting as if you didn't understand what these words actually meant. I only used Urban Dictionary in this case because I wanted to appeal to the fact that this isn't something that I'm generating on my own. Obviously, we all know this. I don't think any person in this room would disagree with the fact that this is a common usage of that word. I just appealed to a different source so that you wouldn't try to run to, well, that's just my opinion, your opinion, as I knew you would be the coward to do.
This deep